This is Riverhill House in Kent. Last year, Ruth Watson advised the family on a viable future for their historic home.
It's over 18 months since I first came to Riverhill and met the 3 generations of the Rogers family. There was a degree of tension between the generations and how they could go forward developing this house, and particularly the garden. You said to me that you were proud of the fact that you kept your mouth closed.
I would never say don't do it, it's up to him.
Now I'm back to see how they got on and how Ed and Sarah, who were in charge of this project, have fared.
I thought I worked hard in the past, but I didn't know the meaning of hard work.
Riverhill House, near Sevenoaks in Kent, is a Grade 2 listed manor set in 130 acres of grounds. The listed gardens are of great historic importance, bearing rare trees and plants. The Rogers family have occupied this estate for over 160 years, and the latest generation is Ed and his wife Sarah.
I live here with what I call my 3 Mrs. Rogers, which is my grandmother, my mother, and Sarah. They're my sort of force on the ground.
4 generations of the family live at Riverhill. Ed and Sarah live with their children in a cottage on the grounds. Ed's mum, Jane, lives in the main house, and Ed's grandmother, Evelyn, resides in the lodge. She's lived at Riverhill since the end of World War II and, at 86, remains the matriarch of the family.
Obviously, I've come to the time of my life when I should be taking a back seat. But you see, we can't manage without each other.
And I think my mother-in-law has given her life to this place. And, well, I suppose in the sort of way I have, really.
Ed's father died prematurely, so Ed inherited Riverhill aged just 21. He struggles to run the estate as well as working full-time in the city.
It came as quite a shock, really, to suddenly find that you were in the driving seat. Just finished university, and then suddenly you're worrying about blocked drains, leaking roofs. It's a lovely place to live, but it's not easy.
Ed's the first Rogers to earn money for nearly 200 years, and it's terribly important, but he works desperately hard. He can't be everywhere at the same moment.
The spring gardens are open to the public, but only on Sundays and bank holidays for just 3 months of the year. This brings in £5,000, but it costs £50,000 to keep the estate going. It's a constant worry for Ed, and selling up isn't an option.
I'd like to, certainly give it my best shot before one goes down that route.
Can I just interrupt? That sounds so lame. Can you just give a bit of passion of why you like it? Why do you love it? Why do you really want to be here? You're not going to just give it your best shot, because that means it might fail. You've got to be a bit of determination.
As the youngest Mrs. Rogers, Sarah is ambitious and recognises that Riverhill needs an overhaul if it's to survive. Not everyone in the family, however, is quite so enthusiastic.
I think it might lose something of its flavour of a family home if it got too big. It'd be nice to get much bigger, but not that big.
In an attempt to turn the fortunes of the family home around, business guru Ruth Watson's been called in to help. Today she's in Kent to meet the Rogers and secure Riverhill House and gardens for the future.
We're frightened of embarking on some schemes. Ruth may be able to give us the confidence to do them.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
Hello, I'm Ed. Welcome to Riverhill.
How do you do? Thank you for the very welcome umbrella. It's awful.
Hello, Ruth.
This is Sarah.
Sarah, hello. How do you do?
Do come in.
Gosh, it's wet, isn't it?
Once inside, Ruth is keen to find out more about the Rogers family.
Oh, this is marvellous. And who lives here?
My mother lives here.
Your mother lives
Yes,
here, right.
yeah.
And then where do you live?
Just down the track, through just the other side of the farm.
And you have a grandma, I believe, as well?
Yes, my grandmother lives in the lodge.
So can I see some more of the house?
Yes, absolutely.
Of course.
Come through to the drawing room.
Since Ed took over the house in 1995, little has changed at Riverhill.
So this is the drawing room.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, the drawing room. There's a picture over there of what the house looked like when my family bought it.
For a house in such a prime hillside location, the outlook today is very different.
Can I just say that's the first thing that hits me is there is no view, and yet there should be a view. I mean, what is this awful stuff outside the window?
Well, the yew hedge was allowed to grow up to block the road down there.
I think it's very oppressive looking. I mean, one doesn't look at the garden and think how beautiful at the moment.
No.
In its heyday, Riverhill House would have been a bustling family home with 12 live-in servants, a dairymaid and 8 full-time gardeners. Today, Ed's mother Jane lives in it alone, and it's a very different story.
How much does it matter to you that the house stays in the Rogers family?
Riverhill is very important to me. I don't want to be the generation that sort of gives up on it.
Do you come from a similar family?
Not at all, no. Definitely not.
So,
and when I first met Ed, it seemed quite strange, the idea that you would stay in the same house. I've come to realise how lovely it is to have that thought that our children are part of this long line of Rogers. The hairstyle is even traditional now.
Is it?
And unchanged.
It's genetic.
It's not genetic.
It looks very 20s, I have to say, very sort of 20s, 30s. Kind of.
Timeless is what I...
It's timeless. Timeless, OK, all right, OK.
Family values are undoubtedly important to the Rogers, but Ruth wants to find out more. Having met one Mrs. Rogers, she's keen to meet the other two.
This is my mother, Jane.
Hello, how do you
nice
do?
to meet you.
And my grandmother.
Hello, Mrs. Rogers. Yes. Hello.
Do sit down.
Thank you. What sort of income is derived from the gardens at the moment?
Practically nothing.
The garden barely at the moment makes enough to cover the cost of actually doing it.
We usually put sort of 1 foot forward and about 20 back.
Do you have any income, Jane, that you either contribute or are you a tenant here? Do you pay rent? How does it work?
I'm just a sort of housekeeper. No, I'm afraid I just don't have the money to put into it.
Right.
But I do try and look after it. As I suppose really it's been a challenge ever since, you know, I've lived here and with Johnny dying and for Ed to carry on.
Further misfortune hit the Rogers family when Ed's uncle passed away 5 years ago. A bachelor who loved the gardens at Riverhill, he left a fund of £50,000 for the upkeep of the grounds. This inheritance could secure the future of the estate. The question is, how?
I've got lots of ideas, but I'm not very brave, Ruth.
Give me a couple of ideas that you've had.
We've got some wonderful woodland, and I thought of perhaps having some sort of adventure trails for children, but not done.
But with space for just 30 cars on site, Evelyn thinks that the family should concentrate on practicalities first.
One of our troubles is our parking is not brilliant here.
We're frightened that if we have more than 30 cars, we can't park them, so we think, oh, well, don't bother doing it.
The family have been here since 1840, and during this whole period of time, all they've had to do was sit around, have a lovely time, collect plants and have their portraits painted. The problem now is it's the 21st century. Whatever happens here is going to be something of a culture shock.
If Riverhill House and its splendid gardens are to survive, radical changes need to be made. But will Ruth be able to spur the Rogers into action?
It took Ed over 10 years to propose to me, so there's no rushing the Rogers.
Riverhill House is the ancestral home of the Rogers family, who have lived here for nearly 2 centuries. The heavy responsibility of the crumbling pile and its historic gardens has fallen on Ed Rogers and his wife, Sarah.
My family created everything around me here, so if I give it all up and hand it on to somebody else, I feel I've given away 160 years of history suddenly in one bosh.
Overlooking the Weald of Kent, Riverhill House was purchased in 1840 by keen botanist John Rogers, who was a contemporary of Charles Darwin. He travelled as far afield as the Himalayas and brought back exotic plants, many of which today make up the splendid gardens at Riverhill. Though sadly, the house and its historic grounds are now falling into disrepair. The spring gardens only open for around 20 days a year, between March and June, attracting fewer than 1,000 visitors and little income. Ruth Watson's been called in to help turn the estate's fortunes around.
Through there we have...
Our woodland garden, which was created by my great-grandfather between the two wars.
That's where most of the visitors go, is it?
Yes,
When they
that's right.
come
Yeah, that's
on
where
that
the,
wall?
where the colour is.
Yeah.
Sarah used to be a primary school teacher and thinks the key to Riverhill's success could be creating a more child-friendly environment.
Watch your feet, Ruth.
Yes.
Don't worry, this bit's not open to the public.
So this is what you refer to as the rockery?
That's right. It was created by my great-grandmother.
In its heyday, this was absolutely magnificent. It had little paths and the water gushing down and sort of a fairy's grotto.
Yes, it is. Very
I wonder about
grotto-like.
sort of little children's parties and having maybe Clemmy's have a third birthday party.
I mean,
in
how
the
much
fairy's
would you
grotto.
like the garden to be really approachable by children?
Oh, very much so, yes. I mean, that's the thing. I'm not really a horticulturist, but I see everything in the eyes of children. I think perhaps we want to retain the sort of wildness and lose the areas which are sort of derelict.
Yeah,
What a job for you, Ruth.
Let's pick up this little wild one.
Come on, Clem.
Go on our journey.
Little has altered at Riverhill since the gardens were established, and Sarah can see that the estate's survival depends on change. Ed's grandmother, Evelyn, is less keen and wants to see the garden's tranquility and historical links maintained.
I've put out here a letter from Charles Darwin to the John Rogers of the day. They were both fellows of the Royal Society. The John Rogers who bought Riverhill was incredibly brainy, and I always say to people, if Darwin was writing to him, as you can see in the letter, asking him a question, referring to him, he must have been pretty brainy for Darwin to want to ask him something. Yes.
What really bothers me about all of this is, does anyone other than you and the family know all this?
Not really.
Because, I mean, this is actually really quite worrying, because if you're the only person who has the knowledge of all these things...
I'm very conscious of the winged chariot is getting nearer all the time, you know, and I would love to have more time to write, but one gets so bogged down with just day-to-day living, which is unfortunate, really.
At 86, Evelyn remains head of the family, and Ruth wants to ensure that this won't prove an obstacle to any potential plans at Riverhill.
How much do you think you're still the matriarchal figure here, and that everyone is going to do what you want them to do?
Oh, I don't say what I want anymore.
So you're very happy for Ed to have free rein, as it were?
Well, he must. Whether I'm happy or not is another thing, but he must. When you hand it over, it's rather like when you first send your child away to school. Is it going to be looked after with loving care? Is it going to be understood? Because I do think these houses have got a soul, in a way.
When the gardens are open to the public, Ed's mum, Jane, is in charge of catering.
So that's your responsibility, opening that door every time?
It is, because there's no one else who can open it.
And do you have to man this tea room all the time?
We don't make enough money,
Right.
you know, to pay someone to come here, really.
Yeah.
Like Evelyn and Sarah, Jane also married into the Rogers family, and Ruth's keen to find out more about how she fits in.
Being in the middle of the generations with your mother-in-law still having a voice, I mean, does that make you feel that you can't do things?
She does actually say what she likes or doesn't like.
Yes, I got that impression.
You know, but I feel that Ed and Sarah are sort of young enough, they're together, they've got more go, I think.
And you think the house will be all right with Ed as the owner?
I hope so, I really hope so.
Being the newest Mrs. Rogers is something of a challenge for Sarah.
How do you feel about being the third Mrs. Rogers? I mean, of the ones I've met, of course.
Slightly daunted, I think. The main thing is not to try and copy, but to try and do one's own thing. You know, it took Ed over 10 years to propose to me, so there's no rushing the Rogers.
Yeah. What prompted it in the end?
Well, I just stamped my foot a bit, I suppose.
Said, would you propose?
I said, you know, it's now or never. So Ed likes to be quite sure. I'd rush headlong into a scheme and get my fingers burnt, but somehow I think perhaps a bit of a mixture of the two would be...
I think you're probably right.
I'm hoping will be good.
Yeah.
So I hope that was...
With 3 Mrs. Rogers living on site, Ruth's got her work cut out if she's going to convince them all that change is inevitable. As the Garden of England, Kent is rich in profitable tourist attractions. With this in mind, Ruth makes a visit to Leeds Castle, where a popular feature is the world-famous maze, constructed from 2,400 yew trees.
I'm trying to find Adrian Fisher, who's the world's leading maze designer. And he's done too good a job here because I can't find the centre and I've been walking for ages. Adrian!
Hello?
I can't find you!
Oh, you'll have to go back the other way, actually.
The other way, right. So, Adrian, if you say a maze is actually a puzzle, can we create a puzzle without it being such a formal maze? In a woodland garden?
It could well be, yes. The whole landscape could be one enormous puzzle. The experience can be actually quite different, visit by visit.
The maze is clearly a memorable experience for the thousands of tourists who visit Leeds Castle. An attraction such as this could prove a money spinner for Riverhill.
There are 3 generations of Rogers, in fact 4 at Riverhill, if you include the tiny tots. I think it'd be marvellous if you could come and meet them.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Having done her research, Ruth's come up with a plan of action for the Rogers. She believes that by investing the £50,000 left by Ed's uncle, Riverhill and its historic grounds could generate enough revenue to support the entire estate. But to achieve this, the Rogers need to raise their game. Ruth's back at Riverhill to deliver her findings.
Good morning, Mrs. Rogers, Mrs. Rogers, Mrs. Rogers, and Ed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think you need to be thinking much bigger than you are at the moment. At the end of the day, visitor numbers have to be increased. You have to have the car park. You have to have attractions linking from the Darwin, the history of the garden, through the garden itself and the plants.
What Ruth wants to see at Riverhill is a major children's attraction that will lure visitors and revenue through the gates. She wants the Rogers to research the concept.
My trump card is a chap called Adrian Fisher. He is the world's leading designer of mazes. He works absolutely with the owners of the site to create things that are specifically good for here. It's all about puzzles in gardens which attract both adults and children.
A feature such as a maze at Riverhill might create more income, but the idea is not sitting well with Mrs. Rogers.
I think it would take away the family atmosphere of the garden.
You said to me that you were proud of the fact that you kept your mouth closed. So I think this is a moment where you really have got to search your soul and say, will I willingly let Ed take on full responsibility?
I would never say don't do it, it's up to him.
Right.
But I just wouldn't like it.
OK.
Ruth also wants to ensure that Riverhill's remarkable history is documented for future generations.
One of the most important things, Mrs. Rogers Senior, is the fount of all knowledge here, and you know this. Whether it's the plants, whether it's the history of the family, all these things are incredibly precious, both to you as a family, but also to our heritage. And I think you should set aside perhaps an hour every weekend and just record you speaking about everything you know.
Yes, I know if I went under a bus, there's so much in my head that will just go forever.
With Mrs. Rogers Senior in charge of preserving the family history, it's all eyes on the future.
It's now time for Ed to step up to the mark and be the man. Now, there's one last thing I would like you to do before I come back. And I think it would be symbolic of change, and that is to cut down the yew hedge. And I think that should be your private little act of commitment to going forward.
Yeah. Good.
Ruth's findings have given the family plenty to think about.
Obviously, it's hurtful to be told it's all in such a sort of state of shambles, which it is. I mean, I know it is, you see.
Sarah, being new blood on the block sort of thing, has some, perhaps some out-of-the-box ideas. Equally, at the other end of the spectrum, we've got my grandmother who's been here 60 years, and I think her goal would be that this remains a family home.
I mean it with no disrespect to my grandmother-in-law, who is a wealth of knowledge, but she can also be a little stubborn on certain points.
I've no idea what Ed will do, but myself, I'd have reservations on putting too much into it. But I know we've got to put something into it, but I just think it's a little bit frightening.
6 weeks after Ruth's visit, and the Rogers are already getting down to business. They've got a team of tree surgeons in to tackle the overgrown yew hedge. And they've wasted no time at all in calling in maze expert Adrian Fisher for advice.
Well, this is our view we've got here from the top of the hill, one of the highest points in Kent other than the Downs.
It's such a fantastic view. It'd be crazy not to include it in the...
I think we've got to get people up here. People love coming to the top of hills, don't they?
And keeping to her side of the bargain, Ed's grandmother is recording the family's history for posterity, with a bit of help from granddaughter-in-law Sarah.
And I thought perhaps we could talk about the trees.
Yes.
And then perhaps go up into the wood garden.
I think so, because I think with these 3 trees...
Well, hold on a minute. Let me just start off the camera a minute. OK. Right. Far away.
Talk about the 3 trees there, because they are so wonderful. And it was so incredibly lucky with the storm that they survived.
Right.
But what is interesting from the family point of view is the turkey oak, which is the big spreading tree.
Right, let me just get a shot of that. Hold on. Yep, the turkey oak, yep.
Because that came back as an acorn in the pocket of Ed's great-grandfather after he'd been fighting in the Crimea.
Ed and Sarah have grand designs for Riverhill's new business, and Ed's hard at work clearing the site. But Evelyn is anxious that with the ambitious new plans, the Riverhill she knows and loves isn't spoiled.
What a lot of the public say is what they love is that it is a family home and it isn't too commercial. And I don't want the atmosphere of the place to go by being absolutely overrun with people. So I think you've just got to be jolly careful to keep the balance of that.
But it's not only Evelyn who's overwhelmed by the speed of change.
A bit daunted myself, I have to say. Well, I was feeling quite optimistic, but I'm feeling a little worried about it all now.
Hi, Simon. Sarah Rogers here.
As a former teacher, Sarah's convinced that the future of Riverhill is all about attracting children and their families to the estate.
Thanks ever so much for the designs you sent through. We wondered whether it could be slightly more Himalayan looking. So I just wanted to really chat things through with you.
The gardens are famous for the rare specimens brought back from the Himalayas in the 1800s. And Sarah's keen to embrace this in the new developments.
The car park you've seen.
Plans for the new gardens at Riverhill are underway, but it appears some members of the family still have their reservations.
It's their thing, and, you know, I've got to stand back, but I fear for them, that's all.
The historic gardens at Riverhill House in Kent are in the process of a major regeneration, with the help of Ruth Watson. In a bid to save the ancestral home, Ed and Sarah Rogers are transforming their estate into a woodland experience for children. It's the end of the summer, and Ruth's back to see how plans are progressing. On her first visit 5 months ago, the panoramic view from Riverhill House was obscured by overgrown yew trees. Ruth's keen to find out if the Rogers have followed her advice and chopped them down.
Hello, Sarah.
Ruth, lovely to see you.
And to see you too. It's beautiful.
It's wonderful, isn't it? I know. No yew hedge?
It's absolutely extraordinary.
It's made quite a difference. The lovely view of our own fields.
We couldn't see any of the fields at all. I mean, it's just...
And the beautiful tree, the oak tree and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it just looks so much better. Well done. So, Sarah, you've been doing things, so can we sit down and have a chat?
But the biggest change of all at Riverhill for generations will be the ambitious Children's Adventure Park.
What we're proposing is that we have a Himalayan theme.
What could be more appropriate?
But we want it to be reflecting the history of the Rogers family, but also make it a really exciting place for families to explore together. So these are just suggestions, really, of ideas which we might take to rebrand ourselves.
Yes, and I think calling it Himalayan Gardens because there is nowhere like that.
No.
I mean, you are creating a unique brand.
Perhaps if I can show you the the map, the car park you've seen,
Yep.
people will come from the car park to the area in front of the tea room.
Yeah, that is the sort of
Absolutely.
retail trading area
I
there.
wondered whether we could call that base camp.
Yes, brilliant idea. Yeah.
And then they go up this hillside path, possibly with a Sherpa pack with for your children.
Yes.
Up to this area here, which is where we'd like a play area.
So that's the Himalayan hideout.
We have asked Adrian Fisher to create one of his wonderful mazes for us.
Right. I don't think I've ever been as impressed by anybody's thought and imagination on a project as this. I really am. I think it's wonderful.
It does mean a lot to me, and well, I know it will to
I
Ed.
think it's brilliant. I think it's just marvellous.
We thought a lot about it,
well done.
we hope it takes off. We've got confidence now.
Yes.
You've given us confidence, so.
Since Ruth was last at Riverhill, Ed's grandmother, Evelyn, has been ill. Ruth wants to make sure that with so many changes afoot, she's aware of the bold scheme.
I'm mightily impressed with the plans for the garden. Have you had an opportunity to look and hear about what they're proposing to do?
Not very much, just a little bit, but I'm thrilled to hear about opening up the woodland and that sort of thing.
Does this imply you've been taking a back seat?
Well, I haven't been in hospital and being at home. It's the first time I've come out for 5 weeks, you see, so obviously I've taken a back seat. But anyway, it's their due, you know.
Yes, yeah. The notion of calling the tea room base camp because, again, of echoing the Himalayas, does that fill you with horror?
Well, I mean, it's only Himalayan in the springtime. I mean, I'm all for it being open in the springtime. If it's going to be open in the middle of the summer, people won't know what you're talking about. It is essentially an English country house.
Your knowledge of the house and the history of it, we talked about Sarah coming and recording.
Yes, well, she started with the gardeners. Oh, and up in the woodland a bit too.
And did you enjoy doing it?
Oh, yes, I love talking. Love the sound of my own voice, yes. No.
We all do.
Yes, and I think that's one thing that I really am grateful to you for. You gave the spur that was necessary to get on with that.
Good.
The maze absolutely boggles me. I mean, I cannot see the point of the maze.
I mean, it is a proven model, you know, it's not something where you're just taking a straw and saying, well, this works.
To this place.
But I think we do get back, Mrs. Rogers, if I may be so bold as to say, is that I think you do have to let them get on with it.
It's their thing, and, you know, I've got to stand back, but I fear for them, that's all. I just don't want them to get themselves into a real tangle.
There's just that first bit there, Ruth.
Sarah's keen to show Ruth the progress they've already made in preparation for the brand new Riverhill experience.
Just take off the top level there. But this, Ruth, was totally impassable.
And this is all Ed's work?
Well, yes, Ed, his brother, and, you know, some friends kindly come along to help. The first friends of Riverhill, I think.
Aerial walkways, climbing frames and tree houses are all part of the master plan. Ed's finalising the proposals with specialist playground designer Lyndon Davis.
Yeah.
Oh, hi!
This is Lyndon from
Hello,
Plain and Simple.
how do you do? Hi.
We were just discussing the plans here for the Himalayan hideout.
And these two big trees, they're here.
That's what, yes, Lyndon's been working on them. They are, Ed, what are they?
Sweet chestnut.
I mean, this is, again, confirmation that John Rogers did some fantastically beautiful things because they are such fine and glorious trees. And here they are. I mean, when did anyone last get to see these, Sarah?
I shouldn't think anyone has stood on this spot where we're standing now for 50, 80 years?
Yeah, 50, 80 years, enjoying it anyway. Certainly these are lovely cedar trees here as well, which were planted, some of the original plantings in 1840, so it's good that people can enjoy them from this side as well as from the south side.
Now, this looks really good fun, very good fun.
Really enjoy doing it. We really enjoy unusual ones.
Yes, yeah, no.
It's not the first plan, is it, Linda?
I bet it isn't.
But Sarah and Ed are saving the best till last. The scene from their very own Mount Everest summit.
This is our proposed viewpoint here.
I mean, this is just staggering.
Is it worth the climb?
Just. I mean, look, but, you know, it is worth the climb. And this, I would say, is arguably the best view in Kent. And the maze is going to be here on
just
this
over
field
there,
in
so
front.
you can
Absolutely,
look
where
over.
that flat area is.
Ruth's clearly impressed with what the Rogers have achieved, but she wants to see Ed and Sarah put their plans to the test.
I think Riverhill's going to become a very special place for people to want to come and visit. And I'm charging you with, on my next visit, to see some kids actually trying some of this out. And I think to see their little faces and to have their Sherpa packs and use them for feedback and research.
Yeah, get some children here and organise a day.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Ed and Sarah have got just 3 weeks to rise to Ruth's challenge and get Riverhill ready for its first guests. It's the day of the Riverhill trial. All the generations of Rogers are pulling together, hoping to make it a success. To tie in with the theme, Sarah's planned a surprise Himalayan guest, somewhat at Ed's expense.
Look.
Children are going to be absolutely terrified.
I think it's a health and safety thing that you can't do this very long, isn't there?
You might be a little worried about your hair. Where will you keep your comb?
Well, the thing is, my product does say that it just stays firm underneath helmets, so maybe it will under a Yeti hat.
With 2 hours to go, Ruth Watson arrives to oversee proceedings.
Hello, morning.
Good morning.
Nice day.
It's beautiful. Isn't it?
Hello.
Oh, hello, Ruth.
Hello.
Nice
activity. It's all looking very good
Nice
out
to
there.
see you.
With lots of backpacks being assembled.
Oh, yes, well, luckily we've got some nice people to help this morning.
Fantastic. And all these cakes.
Yes, we've got a sample menu.
So Jane's putting on her... Are you putting on an apron, Jane?
I'm not sure. I haven't decided.
I've got a notepad.
I like the fact that you're telling people what you're doing and what you're about. That's such a good idea. Everybody is always then up for going with the flow of it.
30 eager local school children have been drafted in to trial the Rogers Himalayan experience. The event begins with an introduction from a very proud Ed.
Welcome, boys and girls, to the Riverhill Himalayan Garden. We're so excited that you can join us here today. And Riverhill was bought in 1840 by my great-great-great-grandfather. He wanted the best plants, so he paid for people to go off and explore the Himalayas and South America. And maybe there has been a sighting of a strange beast in the woods here, so we do have to be very careful.
The children are led up into the wooded garden by Sarah to see some of Riverhill's rarest specimens. They find themselves transported back in time to the Himalayas of the 1800s.
Those enormous trees there, that's where we're going to hope to build the tree houses. Look how tall they are. Anyone know what type of tree that is? Yes?
Horse chestnut.
Well done, a horse chestnut. You're brilliant in our trees, aren't you? Would you like to go and see if you can find that Yeti?
Yes!
Careful though, Kathy, doesn't attack.
The Yeti makes a lucky escape, and the children make it safely to the summit.
Hoist the flag! Hoist the flag! Hip hip!
Ollie, it looks like we can actually see our skull from here. I haven't been here before, but I like it. I might come here again.
The experience is clearly a hit with the youngsters, and the parents are impressed too.
There's not anywhere really around here that's like this, for them to just run around and run up the stream and have a real explore.
So you'll come back when it's a proper going concern?
Definitely.
The trial has gone well, and Ruth wants to know how the family feel.
What a successful afternoon. I have to commend you for doing such a brilliant job. Everything about it. Just wonderful.
Well, we're thrilled it's gone so well.
Yeah, very relieved, very relieved.
So do you now feel confident that this can work?
Yeah, I still have great reservations about the maze because I can't see the point of it, but the climbing frame and the walk I think is wonderful.
And I just hope that your generation, Sarah and Ed, is going to have a wow of a time, and that, you know, you will be able to leave something to your children for them to look forward to rather than to slightly dread. And most importantly, knowing that the house and the gardens are stabilised, they're going to carry on for future generations.
Well, that's what I would like.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
18 months later, and has the business at Riverhill got off to a successful start?
I think it's quite fair to say that this particular part isn't her favourite.
I still have doubts, and I think it's an extravagance.
It's been 12 months since Ruth left the Rogers family at Riverhill House, as they were on the brink of an exciting adventure. Ed and Sarah's plans to create the Himalayan gardens have been realised. By investing the £50,000 from the fund left by Ed's uncle, as well as money from a local grant, the historic grounds have been transformed into a unique children's experience. The once poor visitor numbers have risen from just 1,000 in previous years to 12,000 in the first season, generating a turnover of £100,000.
We had a lot of plans ahead of us. We worked all through the winter with planners and developing schemes.
I'm amazed at what has been achieved, really.
It has undoubtedly been very hard work.
Ed keeps getting recognised on the station and in the office as the Yeti.
I think most importantly, Ruth has given us a huge amount of confidence to actually enact what we've done this year.
She just gave us a pretty good kick up the backside. Ruth told us to aim high, and we've followed that advice. She said, if you're serving coffee, serve the best coffee. If you're making scones, make the best scones. And there's no reason why even small things that we do can't be done in the best way possible.
And life has been busy for Ed and Sarah elsewhere.
The most exciting news was in May when our fourth child was born.
I thought I worked hard in the past, but I didn't know the meaning of hard work.
It's nearing the end of Riverhill's opening season, and Ruth's come back to visit Ed and Sarah, keen to catch up on their developments.
Hello, good morning.
Welcome to Riverhill.
Thank you. Looks very professional.
She finds 4 generations of the Rogers family at the new cafe.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, Ruth. And this is a new addition.
Yes.
Hello. How have you managed to do all of this when you've been so busy? How are you all doing?
Very well.
Yes, yeah.
It's never a dull moment, Ruth.
Very busy year.
I'm
Very
so
exciting year.
impressed with the car park and the signs.
Been very busy, yeah.
And Mrs. Rogers, how have you found it?
Well, I think it's amazing. It's wonderful.
And Jane, the tea rooms, I mean, look at the front of it. It's fantastic.
Ruth, it's not a tea room, it's a cafe.
Cafe, sorry, Jane. The cafe.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. It's been very, very busy, very successful.
There are things for me to see, like Himalaya hideouts.
We'd love to
We'd
show
love
you
to
up
show
in the
you
woods.
around.
Well, I better give this little bundle to Granny.
Okay, yes. I'll catch up with you later. Yes, yeah, good.
See you later. Yeah, that was funny, wasn't it?
In just 12 months, Ed and Sarah have transformed Riverhill into a professional enterprise by developing the gardens.
Oh, this is terrific. Isn't it great?
It's great. It's fitted in really well with the trees and everything.
When I was here on my last visit, this was all being cleared, and you mentioned that there were trees that people hadn't seen for...
Yes. Well, about 80 years, I think. And, yeah, people hadn't been here for 80 years, and now it's, yeah, one of our busiest areas.
It's great to feel it's being used, I think. Can we put some more on?
Ed's time is still split between Riverhill and his job in the city, but he feels that his efforts now will pay off in the long run.
If I think of future generations, what I would like my children to inherit is a historic garden and house that is self-sufficient, and they don't have to feel, oh, we've got to be earning X tens of thousands a year just to keep the central heating on.
They've made a profit of £20,000, which they are investing back into the estate to continue the restoration of other parts of the garden and the house.
And now we've made a start with the tree house. It'd be lovely to put some other bits and pieces in here so that we can make a really exciting area before children go up to the viewpoint.
And the viewpoint is the part where I nearly died. My lungs collapsed. And that's where we're going.
On Ruth's advice, Ed and Sarah employed expert Adrian Fisher to design them a maze. It's been planted with 1,650 yew tree saplings. The posts and rails mean that the children can enjoy fathoming the twists and turns while the young trees grow.
I don't think I have to ask whether the maze is popular.
No, they absolutely love it.
Obviously, your grandmother had some firm opinions about what the garden should and shouldn't have done to it.
I think it's quite fair to say that this particular part isn't her favourite.
The changes we've really made this year haven't really affected the garden as such. You know, this is on the outskirts of the garden. The play equipment is using an area that wasn't used before. So, you know, we haven't sort of changed the substance of the garden, and that's very much what we want to restore in the future.
Ed and Sarah have had to tread gently with their innovative ideas so as not to upset the older generations of Rogers. No one has felt this pressure more than Sarah.
Sometimes I've had to suggest things which, you know, my mother-in-law, my grandmother-in-law hadn't thought was a good idea. You do have to take a bit of a deep breath, but I've got quite good at taking deep breaths.
And you're very, very diplomatic, but has anyone actually ever apologised to you for perhaps getting you wrong in something you've said or wanted to do?
I don't think. We haven't really had too many fallings out. It's just more sort of differing of opinion. So.
Yeah, I think we need to go onwards and literally upwards.
Upwards, quite right. We've got a special event on today, Ruth.
OK,
Come
good,
this way.
good.
Yep.
Even though the Himalayan gardens are proving successful, Ed and Sarah are thinking of ways in which they can take their new business even further. They've been trialling new activities, such as a mobile climbing tower, which they plan to introduce to next season's calendar.
Oh, that looks such fun.
Ruth recognises that Ed and Sarah's hard work in the gardens has paid off. But there have also been improvements in the cafe and gift shop. It's a professional operation with some appropriate Riverhill souvenirs. And it's turned over enough money to allow Ed's mother, Jane, to employ staff, so she no longer runs it alone.
Hello, Ruth. So, I've had a very exciting time up there. It's all looking amazing.
Oh, good,
yeah,
good.
Very good. And how is this going? Because it just looks beautiful. The cakes look beautiful, the shop, everything. That's great.
Well, it's gone extremely well.
Yes.
Very well. A great facelift, isn't it?
Tell me about how you feel the garden's going, and Ed and Sarah particularly, because they've obviously worked so hard, and with the new baby as well.
I know.
Are you proud of them?
I am actually, because I realise it's jolly hard work.
And your mother-in-law, Mrs. Rogers, she seems to be really enjoying it as well.
Yes, I think she is. I think she finds it a little bit much when there's quite a lot of children here, which some days there could be thousands of buggies, thousands of small children. But after all, it's the children that bring the grown-ups.
Is this been a big change in your life?
I think it has been a big jump from 3 months, 1 day a week, to 5 days a week for 6 months. But I think it's right. It's certainly right. And even people have suggested that we're open the whole week. I said, come on, give us a chance.
The changes at Riverhill have been significant and will help secure its future as a family home. Before she meets with Mrs. Rogers, Ruth commends Ed and Sarah on their achievements.
Ed, I seem to recall that at some stage I said you had to step up and be the man. Do you feel that you would have actually fulfilled this quite as quickly, as efficiently without your darling Sarah?
No, I don't think I would have done at all. You know, I might have got there eventually, but I think she's definitely been the fighting force there.
Do you feel that your role here has been validated by the success of Riverhill Himalayan Gardens?
Yes. I feel that now I've contributed something to Riverhill, and therefore I've got the right to feel that this is my home now.
For me, you are a fantastic team, and you deserve every plaudit going. I'm really proud of what you've achieved, and I just hope, I don't need to hope actually, I'm absolutely certain this will be a thrilling success.
All that remains is for Ruth to see Mrs. Rogers, who was always unsure of expansion at Riverhill.
I'm so impressed with what the family have achieved here.
What I have to say is your experience gave Ed the courage to invest a lot into it. And I'm very grateful for that, because he wouldn't have dared do it without your encouragement.
Have you personally been troubled by the fact that the numbers have gone from 1,000 to 10,000 visitors?
Oh, no, of course I'm pleased. Of course I'm pleased with that, yes. I have to be very, very careful crossing the drive because there are so many cars coming down. Every time they come down, I think, well, that's money and we need it.
That's such a super reaction. I'm very pleased you feel that way about it. You had grave doubts about the value of putting a maze in. How do you feel about that now?
I still have doubts because they've given themselves a labour-intensive thing, which is going to be labour-intensive always. I just feel it's totally foreign to Riverhill, and I think it's an extravagance when there's so much that needs doing near the house. The inspired thing here has really been opening up that woodland, and I think it's been a terrific draw. The little boys, they all come down carrying a stick. Ed thinks it's marvellous. He wanted the undergrowth cleared. The little boys are doing it for him. You know, every little boy who goes up there comes down with a stick.
Mrs. Rogers was concerned that Ed and Sarah's plans would change the family feel of Riverhill. Ruth wants to know if her worries have eased.
Do you think Ed and Sarah have done right by this house and garden?
I think they've probably been its salvation. I've only been worried that it wouldn't work and they'd lose money on it. That's what's frightened the life out of me, you know.
But you're not frightened anymore?
Not really, no. I just keep my fingers crossed. Long may it last, but I think it's kicked off to an amazing start. And I think they may have saved the place. I think they probably have. It's rather wonderful.